cool, fair enough. But yeah, man, Mantas, what's up, man?
All good, all good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, come on, happy to have you here as well, man.
Yeah, we tried to, I think since the last time we spoke, we tried to do it for a little while, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now the time is here. Happy to be here. Happy to be part of Beyond the Surface.
Yeah,
So.
no, likewise. And I think for us, it's been quite busy. So like we've got a lot of people, like we're basically like scheduled for the rest of the year.
Nice.
And then after that, yeah, we're already like looking at January and stuff. So it's a bit mad for us, but it's good. It's a good thing to be busy with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's really powerful that, you give a platform for people to be heard, you know, because I think a lot of the times right now we have conversations with people and people just kind of tend to have a conversation with the intention to answer rather than with the intention to listen, and I think as long as people won't be heard, we won't be able to solve problems that are happening in the world. So people make sure to hear each other and listen to each other.
Come on, I love that. And like, you're right, it's just, I think the way people listen to each other is like, is that thing of like, they just want to respond and rather than hearing what the person's really trying to say. And I think that comes with a bit of being open-minded and going, you know what, let me try and understand what the person's saying. So yeah, but I've got the first question for you. Yeah?
Sure.
And it's quite deep, but from your own experience, what's it like being a man for you?
Wow, being a man, it's a lot of responsibility, I would say. It's a hard thing. I mean, it's a really hard thing, and especially in today's society when I think masculinity is trying to be suppressed so much. And the society is trying so hard to suppress man's natural instinct of what it actually means to be a man, right? And because I don't think we have a lot of role models to kind of show men what it means to be a masculine man. Especially, quoting Jordan Peterson, they have to take personal responsibility, because if you really want to reorganize the world, you really need to start reorganizing your own life. And I think that's what people make a major mistake of, trying to, change the world without having their own lives in check first.
Yeah.
So I think being a man was, for me, and it still is a journey. I think it's a lifelong journey. And throughout the history, being a man, you really had to prove yourself to your own tribe, coming from tribalism, right? Because this is where we originate, coming from different tribes and that. So men would have to go through rites of initiation. They had to prove themselves to a tribe that they're worthy enough. They have all the qualities of masculinity, which means obviously competence, strength, courage, honor and mastery, right? And all these qualities would always have to be considered when you try to prove yourself to your tribe, right?
Yeah.
So now what we're seeing is that you don't really need to prove yourself to be a man. It's like, well, you're just born a man and therefore, go out in the world without actually taking the path first. So, I mean, compared to women, I mean, women are always born with value, right? Because what's the biggest value of femininity? What men look for in women. They usually look for fertility and beauty. That's what men usually care about. When it comes to a man, obviously, you need to start building your value, because the value of a man comes from actually creating the value of your own. Because if you can't build resources, you can't show yourself that you're a competent leader, that you're assertive, and somehow all these qualities are being suppressed as toxic masculinity. And in no way, shape or form I believe in toxic masculinity. And I think it's a really, really bad message to men out there to kind of tell them that, you're toxic just for your mere existence.
But toxic is not even, I want to touch on the word toxic because it's something that's been used a lot in the last 5 years. You know what? I think until 5 years ago, I don't think anyone was using it. And it's become like super popular. Everything's toxic. Like people go like, you're toxic, this is toxic. But what does it really mean? Like, it's almost like it doesn't have a particular definition. Obviously it does, but as in like it can be so applied to so many different things in general.
Well, if we believe that masculinity is toxic and we outline all these qualities like assertiveness, strength, physical and mental fortitude, also leadership. If we say that all these qualities are toxic, why are we trying to encourage women to be like that? Do you know what I mean? Why is women empowerment based around these qualities? So is it really grab for power, or are we trying to? Because like there's two ways of tearing down the tallest building in the world, right? One way is building the tallest building, which is really hard, and most people won't really make an effort to do that. But another way is to tear down the tallest building that's out there so you can stand out, right? So I think the society's taken the second route and just kind of trying to suppress the masculine spirit. Because, look, if someone breaks into your house, right, and tries to rob you, for example, you're not going to call a man toxically masculine if he's going to go and beat up the burglar, right? You're not going to call anyone toxically masculine if, you know, they say, oh yeah, you have to protect women and children first from like the cruise ship that's on fire, you know, and you have to leave all the men behind. So where's toxic masculinity then? Yeah. So, you know, and the society is trying really, really hard to suppress man's natural spirit, what it means to be a toxic, what it means to be a man. And I fully reject this mentality, and I don't believe in this, because the problem is not with toxic masculinity. The problem is with weak men. That's where the problem is, the weakness in men, because they don't have the leadership. I mean, a lot of men grow up in single mother households, right? They don't have the father figure in their lives. So I think to balance it out, to kind of allow men to integrate his masculinity, there has to be some sort of male figure that can guide a man how to behave, you know, what qualities to kind of look for in life. And this is why people like Jordan Peterson are so influential amongst men, because it's something that, you know, they're lacking in their lives. They're lacking that encouragement that, man, you're more powerful than you can imagine. And you can do all the greatest things, because look at this world that we're living in right now. Most of this world has been built by men, you know. Most of them have risked their lives to build those skyscrapers in the world, you know. A lot of them died. I mean, the highest suicide rates are in men. Most men are out on the streets being homeless. Most people that die in wars are men, you know. Most people that suffer from homicide are men. Most people that killed are men. So where's toxic masculinity really? Like, what are we actually looking for? Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what? It said something really interesting at the start of your point. You said, like, where back in the day someone had to prove to become a man, someone had to do certain particular things, where like now anyone can just claim he's a man and just basically be any kind of man. Like someone could just be sitting on the couch and saying, I'm a man.
Of course. Like, to be a man is a great honor. And that's what I would recommend every man to kind of, you know, like, don't listen to anybody that tells you you're toxic masculine just because you're a man. You have an opportunity to say no, and the less times you'll be saying no to things that you won't agree, the weaker and weaker and weaker you'll grow. Because at the end of the day, you have to take responsibility for your actions. And if you're willing to take that responsibility of rejecting some people's opinions, then go for it.
What about couples? Yeah, for instance, what about couples when there's a woman and a man, and they both tend to have like more feminine energy? Like, I can't fully relate to that, but I'm just fascinated with how that works, because from what I've seen so far,
it doesn't work long term.
Yeah.
For short term, it might work, because I mean, feminine and look, you look at nature. You look at yin and yang, right? You look at two polar opposites, the law of polarity, right? Opposites always attract, even if you put two magnets together. Polar opposites always attract. So feminine and feminine, or masculine and masculine, even if I think even if you look at that dynamic in people when they have two, I mean, feminine energies and stuff, that won't last long term, because we always want something that other person doesn't have.
But do you think it's possible to have a level of understanding to go like, you know what, I'm in this relationship and we both have the same type of energy, which I actually understand, and obviously there might be a lack of, you know, the masculine energy or whatever, but like, because of the understanding they have, they can actually still have that relationship.
But it's like, really, you need to ask yourself that question: do you want to be in a relationship with yourself, with someone that is yourself? Would you? But what would you learn?
But they might obviously they'll have a completely different personality, right? But they might have the same. So when it comes to that energy, they might have the same approach to situations, which is obviously understandable. So it's sort of like replicating yourself with approach to stuff, but at the same time, the other person does have a different outlook on life anyways, right?
I mean, we live in a diverse world, right? There's different kinds of people, and it really depends on your own mission. Like, what is your own mission in this world? What do you think is the most valuable thing to you? You know, what is at the top of your hierarchy that you're looking at? You know, what is that godlike figure? Because I think that's what gives a life meaning, right? And you have to go through all these values as a man, as a woman, as a person, really. And, you know, you just have to attract different people into your life and just, most importantly, learn from them. Yeah.
What's your mission?
My mission?
Yeah.
Wow. It's a powerful question. I think that mission changes with time, I would say. Obviously, when I was like 15, my mission was, when I was 7, my mission was to be a Batman, right? My mission right now is completely different. But I think and it sounds quite cliched, of course, but to kind of let people know that they're more powerful than they can be. People have underestimated themselves for such a long time, and my mission is to kind of allow people to evolve, right? Like, guys, you're here in this world that's been built, and it freaking works at the end of the day, right? Everything works. So this is why I train so much. And just kind of, I think, because my body physically has been in pain for so many years now. I don't imagine my life without pain at all. Because I think as a man, you have to go through this in order to realize and appreciate like small things. Even when you're having a meal after a long day of training or something like that, you start appreciating very, very small things in life. And that actually brings you closer to your mission. I would say, yeah.
So does pain make you appreciate things even more? And is pain more of an indicator to just kind of show you that you're going through a process of growth?
Yeah.
Whether it's pain physically or like sometimes mentally, you know, you might be going through a certain situation, but then as long as we're utilizing that pain into something productive rather than the reason why we can't do something or achieve something, then that's a positive, right?
Yeah, I think as human species, we have been endangered for so many centuries, right? Just running away from wild animals and whatnot, going through wars, you know, seeing your friends and family die. So we have suffered immensely for so many years. And I think when you start aiming and embracing that pain that you create yourself, there's learning that starts taking place, right? So when learning starts taking place, you start looking at things from a completely different perspective, because not only you can understand yourself, but you can understand other people's pain too.
Yeah.
So, so I think maybe like the Buddhists got it figured out, you know, centuries ago. Maybe suffering is the way of life. Maybe that's the purpose, to suffer. With that suffering, you will be able to transmute it into something of virtue, into something great. And you'll be able to build on top of that and just tell other people, like, guys, don't cover yourselves and don't bubble wrap yourselves. Embrace the pain, because maybe that's what will give your life meaning at the end of the day if you feel lost. Yeah.
What's your take on, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a story before I ask you the question, but yeah, what's your take on being content and sort of like finding inner peace and sort of like, not, because I don't think anyone can get rid of the ego completely, but getting rid of your ego as well. Because for me, I think like I've got to a stage in life where, and this was like more recent, like I got to a stage in life where actually like I became super content. I was like, I'm still super peaceful and stuff, but not as content as I was before. And then I sort of like worked on my ego a little bit, but then I got to the point where like, actually, like those things that seem positive are actually impacting my growth in terms of just achieving stuff in life. Because the moment I can accept my current situation as like I'm cool, I just like, what else I'm going to be looking forward towards, you know? So I had a switch where like I said, nah, this can't be it, because actually not just because of like, not for the sake of greed or anything like that. I want to achieve more because I want to see like what other experiences are out there in life. You know, I can't just be content with that certain experience I'm in at the moment, because also that becomes comfortable, right? Yeah. That's another thing with comfort zones.
Comfort zone, you know about it, right?
Yeah.
I think comfort zone is the biggest poison everybody could take, really, because with that, all the growth stops. Once you get into that comfort zone, like what are you trying to achieve when you're comfortable? You're not aiming for anything. You're just happy with the current situation. Whereas although some people might be okay with it, some people are okay to be comfortable, and it's absolutely fine. If they're fine with it, that's fine. But people like myself, I don't like to be comfortable. That's why I like to bring different challenges in my own life. Not only because it makes it more difficult, but it makes it more interesting, because then I'm like, how else can I evolve as a human being? What else is out there on the other side of the fear?
But you know what's funny? Yeah, ultimately, every single time you stretch your comfort zone, you're just gonna build a new one anyways. And I feel like that's sort of like the catch-22. But like every single time you do something new, your comfort zone expands. So you become more comfortable with something else, and then something else, and then something else, and the process just always repeating constantly.
I think my biggest some sort of discovery was in regards to fighting comfort zone was the discovery of Stoicism. So when I have discovered Stoicism, I've understood that I can't get gripped on the good times, but also can't be put down by bad times as well. So I just can't. In a way, Stoicism is kind of related. Oh, you're like always unemotional. You're not showing your emotions and stuff. But I think there's great philosophy in it. And if people haven't read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, it really teaches you a lot how you can stay kind of level-headed through good and bad times. Because when the sea is rough in the ocean, when the waves are rough in the ocean, you just stay calm and stay conducted. And I think that's when you can make the most rational decisions in your life. So instead of getting comfortable, you really have to start bringing the awareness in. You have to be aware of, how you usually operate in your life, in the world, in the society. And most importantly, how can you be useful not only to yourself, but to your family, to your community, to your country, to everybody? Because once you start being useful to others, I think this will bring a lot of value into your own life.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think just going back to the comfort zone thing as well, I feel like that's just a state that human beings have been used to for years. And I think, just based on, obviously we live in different times now, but back in the day, I just feel like, reaching that comfort zone state was a bigger thing than it is now. I think it's much easier to reach that now because of the ages we're living in. But back in the day, when people had to like hunt and do all of this other stuff,
so they were less comfortable.
Yeah, but that's the thing. But obviously they were trying to reach the comfort zone just to be stable as a human being, right?
The human history was always in regards to survival.
Yeah.
We always try to survive at all times. So even during war, even during the times when the food was scarce, since the Industrial Revolution, I think humans have started kind of going backwards a little bit in evolution, because everything just started becoming more comfortable. Now we have Amazon, now we have Deliveroo, now we have Uber. We live in a sort of microwave society right now when we want things instantly. We want Netflix.
You know what's funny? So I'm reading a book called Atomic Habits
by James Clear.
Yeah. So he talks about that in a different sort of light. So he talks about removing resistance. So when it comes to habits. So sometimes like resistance to get something, or so for instance, like if Amazon wasn't there, I'd have to go out there and do certain things. But what Amazon does is it removes the friction between me and getting something, which is also habit related. Yeah. So a lot of these services, they're actually capitalizing on people's habits,
on the cues.
It's nuts
because it's always available, so of course you're gonna go and do it because you don't really need to put much effort into it.
So for instance, and it was given this beautiful example of like, it's actually much more difficult. So let's say people that are watching YouTube, right? What YouTube does, they'll have this autoplay thing, or a Netflix will have autoplay thing, so it's much harder to turn it off because it's doing it for you. Where like before, like someone might, after the first episode's done, they might be like not willing to put the next episode because there's more friction. So they remove the friction by just autoplaying stuff.
I think what they did, and it was so smart in regards to social engineering and everything else, is that they have been able to capitalize on people's attention, and people's attention has always been the most valuable currency in the world, right? Because your energy goes where your attention flows, right? So obviously the algorithms on social media and even YouTube, you could start watching one video and then 5 hours later you end up watching cat videos without even realizing how the hell did I get here? So there's a lot of intelligence that goes behind it, but it's all for the purpose to keep you more enslaved in this sort of system, this algorithmic system, and kind of taking your attention away from the things that you should be doing in life, you know, you should be pursuing and stuff. And then I think that's why we see the situation in our society right now, that, you know, people that kind of lost purpose, people don't really know what they want to do, is because they pay their attention somewhere else. They don't go out there and try new things out, you know. And like I've always lived with this notion that eventually I'm gonna die, so it's better to have more what ifs at the end of the at the end of the day. It's better to have more what ifs than basically regretting.
Do you know what's funny? The moment we were born, we already died.
Yeah. Well, that's the paradox of life, right?
Yeah, like the moment we gain life, we already died, because that's what comes with it. You know,
Yeah,
that's the flip side.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you just have to put as much effort into making this human experience valuable to you, because you know, maybe that's why we're here. Maybe that's why, you know, and it comes from sort of a metaphysical type of perspective, that maybe God is trying to experience what it means to be a human, and that's why we're here.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
I love that. And you know what? So in terms of like watching like YouTube and TV series and stuff like that, it's interesting because I also blame like people that produce a certain type of content, because a lot of the content actually, if you look at what's on there, like I used to watch that stuff more before. I barely watch stuff now, anyways, but whatever's out there is kind of like this replica of day-to-day life, rather than something which is inspiring, or something where I can just watch and just learn something, or my mind can shift into something else. It's almost like it's replicating my daily life or someone else's daily life or whatever, even though my daily life is not like that. But yeah,
I think it's because our brain is inheritably lazy. So our brain doesn't want to burn calories in any way, shape or form, right? This is why we have to push ourselves and build that mental fortitude, to like, oh yeah, I have to force myself to go to the gym, have to force myself to do this until it starts becoming a habit, right? But inheritably, our brain just wants to be lazy. It doesn't want to burn calories, because the more you have to think about the content that you're watching, the more calories you're burning. So obviously your brain is overworking, right?
Yeah. And
your body is not comfortable doing that. So this is why it's even so hard for even small children to pay attention right now these days, because the brain is always looking for that stimulus, for the dopamine rush, that we get through social media, that we get through games and everything else.
Yeah. No, for sure. And just going back to Atomic Habits as well, one thing I liked in that book in particular is, the funny thing is I used to do that. That's the strategy I had in my own life, but I didn't know that's how it was kind of described. But you know, the guy goes, just if you want to start something, just do it for like 2 minutes. Because it's more about, and that's what I used to tell people. People used to ask me like, how do I start training, or how do I do this? I used to say like, look, just make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. You
know, like it's not actually difficult to run for 1 minute.
Yeah.
You know, and do that for a month. Run for 1 minute for a month, and then you're going to get to the point where actually like this is a habit. Like you're automatically going out there and running. Now I can do it a bit longer. Add 10 seconds each time, you know, like another 20 seconds or 30 seconds, just build it.
Yeah, just 1% compound rule, really. At the end of the year, you'll be 365% better than you were last year, just with 1% improvement. So we might think, you know, if I want to build a great body, if I want to be healthy, if I want to do this, X, Y, and Z, I have to achieve so much. But people start looking at the big picture too early, because you see the big picture only starts with a single stroke, right? So just 1%. If you can commit 1%, you know, even if people say, oh, I don't really have time to exercise. Like, man, if you have time to go to the fridge and take a snack out, you have time to exercise, because you can walk around. Walk is a form of exercise too.
But there's another thing. There's another thing where people actually don't believe that a small thing can make a difference. You know,
because they don't know. They never tried.
Yeah. Because for example, like, you know, doing 10 press ups a day for 365 days. Yeah. You know, you still end up having like what 3,650 press ups, and rather than, you know, and I'd rather have that in a year than nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
That still makes a difference.
Exactly. There's always devils in the details, right? Yeah. So the small things, they always make the probably the biggest difference. Even you getting up early every day, like half an hour earlier than you usually do, will make so much impact in your life, and you'll start feeling it, changing the foods that you eat, you know, changing like how much water you drink and things like that. So all these very small things, we try and frown upon them and kind of brush them under the rug most of the time, but they make the biggest impact in our lives and the way we perceive the world around us. So because
I'm really into habits right now, just another example. So for instance, like I don't mind talking about my personal life. So I was having issues with waking up early, like for the last like 3 months and stuff. But I've been getting up at 6 a.m. now. But you know what? It's just that small shift. So I was basically like putting my phone in a place where it's right next to the light. Yeah, and I made those habit cues. So it was, you know, you mentioned cues as well. It's like what happens after the next one. So it's stacking them up.
Yeah.
So I literally moved it there. And my thing was in the morning, doesn't matter how tired I'm feeling, if I can even barely open my eyes, doesn't matter for how long I slept, I'm going to go to that phone because it's right next to that. I'm going to turn the light on.
Yeah.
And then my next cue was like, once I turn the light on, I'm going to go straight to the kitchen and turn the light on there and start boiling the kettle. So that sort of, I just stacked them up and I was like, that's what made a difference.
Yeah. You have to make it. You have to make it difficult for yourself to kind of get rid of habits, but you also have to make it unattractive. Why are you trying to get rid of that habit? Because it's a conscious process that you have to go through. So from conscious, you have to make it to unconscious. Right? So you start thinking about it like, why do you need to go to the gym? Oh, because I want to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? So asking yourself why? Like, I want to lose weight because, you know, I want to be healthy. Why do you want to be healthy? Oh, because I'm going to live a longer life. Why do you want to live a longer life? Oh, because I want to experience my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. Why do you want to experience that? Oh, maybe that's the meaning of life. So you have to really ask yourself and start digging really, really deep. What's the purpose of you doing anything? By the way,
just for clarification, I know what you meant, but I'm just for listeners, I'm going to shift it from, because you said from conscious to unconscious, you meant unconscious to conscious. I know that's what you meant.
No, it turns into unconscious.
So so talking about like when you're unconsciously incompetent, then you become consciously competent.
No, so for example, when you start looking at your habits, right? So you consciously become aware of the things that you want to change. Okay. And then it turns into your subconscious. Right?
Okay. So you basically become unconsciously competent in something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
So for the listeners, if you didn't get it, from conscious to subconscious, this is how we program our mind, basically. Yeah. Because 90% of the choices that we make every single day comes from our subconscious mind anyway. Most of the time, we're not really aware of that. Like, why do you, like, when you wake up, you know, you turn on the light and whatnot, you go and boil the kettle. Most of the time, you don't really think about it. It's the program that keeps running behind the scenes, right? We're all, like, running different programs in our own mind. And if you really want to break it down, you really need to start digging into that particular program. And a lot of that comes from your childhood. A lot of that comes from the way you've been brought up by your parents, uncles, aunties, and you know, and whatnot. So yeah, it's, if you really, really want to change your subconscious mind, you really need to start becoming aware of the certain things that you do and how you want to change them.
Awareness is important, actually. That's come up quite a few times. Definitely, like I feel like as the podcast goes on, like there's so many different themes that keep like sort of repeating. Yeah, which is I'm starting to kind of like see this model of like there's some really important areas in life where people should really pay a lot of attention to, and awareness is definitely one of them. And I like the fact that you mentioned it,
especially awareness of what's happening in the world right now. You know, people don't pay much attention. They're too distracted watching Love Island and and everything else. Like, guys, pay attention, because we might repeat the mistakes of the past of what's happening. And you know, looking back to the 20th century, what happened, you know, in the past with the famines that have happened, like in 1921 to 1922, there was a big famine in Russia, right? 30 million people were starved. 5 million people have died because of the famine, because basically the reason why they had a famine was because the government were basically saying that the people, the peasants, are underlying the war efforts in a civil war, right? So we have to take all the resources from them and and feed the soldiers and whatnot. So they were selling human parts on the market. Women would not be willing to give away their dead husband's body because they had to eat it, right? Wow. So people have turned into cannibalism, and all these things have happened. And I'm so actually surprised that they don't teach in schools and universities. It's like, guys, this is history. This is what happened. Like, why are you not teaching these things? Oh yeah, maybe it's too offensive. Maybe it's too brutal, too graphic. It's like, guys, but these things have happened. And I think this is how you build a weak society without allowing them to integrate their own shadow, right? Integration of the shadow is so important for everyone, because people now think that being harmless, not being able to cause any harm is some sort of virtue. Like, you're not virtuous if you're not able to cause or be a threat to anybody, then you're just harmless. You're not virtuous. You're not able to do anything. So I think the integration part comes especially from people who are able of danger, who are able to cause harm, but they just choose not to do that. Because they're aware of how much damage they could cause.
So for instance, like fighters would be a good example of that.
Martial arts.
So for example, like I remember when I started doing Muay Thai, initially I was like initially I thought that I'm just gonna like start fighting everyone. Like I thought, but the thing is, as time went on, like I realized actually the fact that I can fight or the fact that I can beat someone up is the more a reason for why I wouldn't use that, because when you start understanding how dangerous something is or what kind of impact or consequence it can create, then just go, you know what, actually that's, you know what, it's a cliche thing, but it's like with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely. Like people in regards to like being dangerous and being really not to do any harm for others and not to exert your power onto others is what makes someone integrated, because we know what have already happened in the 20th century where in Nazi Germany there was a battalion 101. It was a police force of 30, 40 and 50-year-old men, ordinary men. There's a really good book, Ordinary Men, by Christopher Browning. And basically, in the book, the author speaks about how ordinary men were committing all these crimes of taking pregnant women, shooting them in the back of the head. They were killing Jews in like ridiculous numbers, like 3,000, 11,000 a day. They were taking them to the forest and just shooting them at the back of the head. And what is so interesting, that they were all given a chance to not do it, to leave. They were all given a chance to leave, but most of them chose to stay. And I think the reason for that is because, one, they were not integrated with their shadow, right? So if you think you're harmless, when these things arise, you have to understand that everything evil that has been done in the world has been done by humans, and you are one of them. So when people say, oh yeah, you know, if the war starts, I would take the side of, you know, saving people, I would be the one saving people. No, you wouldn't. You have to understand that you'd probably be pushed to taking a stance and siding with the government and following the orders, because I'm just following the orders, right? You would follow the orders and you might even enjoy it. That's what you have to understand, because these people were enjoying it in their own small, corrupted hearts. They were killing all these women and children. They were even, so if they would shoot a woman with a baby, they would have to kill the baby too, because, well, they had to justify that baby will not be able to survive on its own. So they had to kill the baby too. And a lot of them, they were suffering immensely, physiologically, physically as well. They were shooting in the ceiling with their guns at night. They were screaming, and they were given alcohol to kind of numb the pain. But most of them stayed because they didn't want to appear cowardly in front of their comrades, right? That's why they stayed, and that's what they they went into all this together as a team, sort of, you know. So as humans, we are very tribal, right? So it kind of we exert our tribalism from chimpanzees. So we're very familiar in terms of tribalism to chimpanzees, right? We all sort ourselves out in hierarchies. Chimpanzees have hierarchies too. But once you start identifying with your group identity, right? Oh, I'm part of this group, I'm part of that group, I'm part of Antifa and whatnot. We start exerting our power onto other groups in the hierarchy in order to reach the top of the hierarchy, because this is basic human instinct.
Yeah, it's a community thing. And everyone's sort of like, sometimes like I've seen people, like young people who for example, like for instance, like I could tell that that's the sort of community they're trying to go towards, but they just haven't reached it yet. So I think everyone's like sort of like got their own community, and there's so many different communities out there. And I think as time goes on, like there's more and more of the communities that's being created as well. So
but we need the community, right? But we can't push people to think that their community and their group identity is paramount over everybody else. If we're able to live within different communities and speak to each other and share and whatnot, that all comes down to the values that are taught by religions and stuff, the morality and stuff like that, right? I think in the Western world, right, if you look at, for example, third world countries, so if you look at like Nicaragua, if you look at Brazil, Honduras, and obviously in Honduras there's a lot of homicide happening, but I think especially in these third world countries where people are really, really poor, there's at least some sort of morality that's out there. There's some moral code that people follow, right? It's not written, but people already know. It's like, oh, I can't go and rob my neighbor because he knows my cousin, and then my cousin, you know, helped him out to build a house and stuff like that. So there's some sort of morality that's happening. If you look at the Western world, if you look at the first world countries, right, there's no morals whatsoever, right? People go and rob their neighbors occasionally. Often, very often, right? So all of these crimes are happening in between, you know, their own basically friends and family, because there's no moral code, because people think that there won't be any repercussions of what they do to each other.
It's sort of like unwritten rules.
Yeah, but I think what stops people from acting like really savage animals in the Western world is the fear of law and order, right?
It's consequences, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when people are afraid of law and order, so for example, you do X, you're gonna go to prison and stuff, and you know that's why kind of people don't do it, right? And I would debate. I can't remember in exactly what country. So there's a certain country, and I think it's still happening now. I'm gonna research it after and let you know, but it's definitely factual. So basically, there's a country where drugs are basically like illegal to the point where like you'll face a death penalty, right? Before that, so that law came out at a certain point in the country. Before that, it wasn't the case, but they brought that law out. Indonesia or something.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, around there somewhere. But when they brought the law out, they were hoping that people would stop, like basically consuming drugs, right, like heroin and stuff. But basically, what's happened is like they didn't give a shit. Like they didn't care about the consequences whatsoever.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't really change. It's really hard to change someone who is criminal. You know, in their own mind, it's really hard to change their mind, right? But I think it would prevent new people from committing these crimes, like the newer generations, right, from doing this, because obviously they grew up with law and order. But I think what's happening right now, especially in the West, the law and order is breaking down, right? Defund the police, defund this, defund that. You know, we don't need all of these institutions and stuff, and they're kind of pushing for people to kind of sort themselves out between themselves. And without any moral code in the society, without no morality, without law and order, nothing will be there to stop people from becoming savage animals. It will be like a purge.
Yeah. So kind of like survival of the fittest sort of thing.
Yeah, but this is what it's all going to. And if we don't pay attention, you know, we might repeat the mistakes of the past. So my advice to the viewers would be, guys, you have to pay attention to what's happening in the world, you know, because there's a lot of correlations with, you know, like you really have to look into, like, is the government gaining more power over us or less power over us? And we know for a fact that the power corrupts, right? So obviously, if you look at, I read so much about Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, Stalin, Hitler. So the more powerful somebody gets, the more paranoid they get, the more suspicious they become over other people that try and get their power from them, right? So they start even killing their own people. You know, Genghis Khan killed his own brothers and stuff. Stalin killed his own comrades. Hitler was killing his own people as well. So they become more paranoid because obviously, essentially, power corrupts.
But do you think? So that's my question. I guess. Do you think they were killing them because they were paranoid, or do you think they were maybe killing them because they were kind of like against to what they were doing with the leadership abilities and what their vision was?
I think they were solely paranoid.
Yeah.
Right. This is why. Anybody who would even speak freely against the government, like we're both from Lithuania, right? The writer Salome Neris, she wrote a poem about Stalin, and she got exiled into concentration camp in Siberia just for writing a poem. So everything that has to do with the government, it's a threat, and you'll go to a concentration camp, right? During Holodomor in 1932 to 1933 in Ukraine, when they starved 8 million people to death, right? Basically, they were taking all the resources from the Ukrainian farmers to bring it back to the Soviet Union, bring it back to Russia, right? Because there was loads of drought, everything. So there weren't a lot of crops, there weren't a lot of resources during that time. That's why they had to basically centralize all the resources and bring it back to the government. So a lot of people were left starving, right? And even if there was a single grain dropped on the ground and you picked it up and they found it, and they found that found out that you picked up that grain, you will go to a concentration camp.
Do you know what's really crazy? Like, now that I think about it, like, see all of that stuff that just happened like around the corner. This is not like,
not even 100 years ago.
Yeah, this is like I think what Lithuania gained its independence in 1991 or 1990, something around those times. But it's like even if you look at 98, it's like when it was going on for such a long time, it's like that's just around the corner. Like people are still alive from those days, and there's
still generation of those people that lived under the Soviet Union.
It's actually mad. So like sometimes when I look at the world and where it's at the moment, I'm like, actually it's not that bad of a place. Of course, there's like certain things like government could be way better, certain things could be way better. But for example, like, why do you even have armies?
Yeah, well,
armies, like for instance, let me just put it in this perspective, right? Obviously, I know what there'll be different reasons for it, but if we spent all that money that we use for armies onto like maybe like some sort of like, I don't know, industry where there's like youth work or whatever, like I personally think we would create a better world. You know, if countries stop separating themselves as like, you know, like different countries and sort of united. Yeah, all of that stuff is fascinating. The way everything's structured.
You see, it's very convenient for the system to keep people mentally enslaved into this matrix, right? Because the best slave is the one who doesn't understand they're slaves, right? So they think they're free. They think they're free to do whatever they want, but yet they're bound by rules, but they're bound by the dress code, they're bound by the regulations and everything else. So they can't be free in symbolically free system that they might assume. So, so, I mean, the world hunger can be solved tomorrow if the leaders really wanted to, but it profits somebody. That's why it's out there. That's why we have all these problems and terrorism and things like that, because somebody profits from that. And the power corrupts at the end of the day.
So we're gonna have to do another episode at some point as well, because we're running out of time anyways.
Yeah, no problem.
Because there's another thing I wanted to touch on as well. Was that Elon Musk thing recently? I think the UN was saying that if Elon Musk gave like 6.8, well, whatever.
Yeah, if he sold his Tesla stock, he would basically solve the world's hunger.
But remember I commented on that thing. I think, and it's just like, it's basically going to be used for like funding the UN basically. Anyways, I think it wouldn't solve anything. But
I think what the UN said basically, if the Elon Musk sold, I think 1% of his stock or something like that, he would gain like 6 billion, and he would be able to solve world hunger. Last year, I think the UN food program have received 8.9 billion in donations. Why isn't world hunger still solved?
Because it was used to fund the UN's like job roles.
Exactly.
But also, I think a lot of the issues in the world are like mindset related anyways. Because you can actually give food to someone, you can give money to someone, but if the mindset isn't correct, that food will disappear really quickly. That money will go really quickly. That's why hence some people can become millionaires today and be broke tomorrow, because they don't have a certain mindset when it comes to money and stuff like that. So
it all happens in your mind.
So I don't believe that a problem can be fixed by spending money on it. I don't think that's a feasible way of fixing stuff. I think a problem can only be fixed by finding solutions that's related to a mindset, and if you want to have a shift of perspective.
If you want to fix the world, you have to fix yourself.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
That's a good point. So so my last question, actually, do you want to promote anything, by the way?
Well, if anyone's, it really depends. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Mantas, Mantas. And you can find some more information about me on my Instagram page. Hit me up, DM me if you really enjoyed the episode, and I will be more than happy to connect. Yeah.
Cool. And the last question that we like to ask every single person, I don't know if you know what it is, but I'll tell you anyways. But if you could tell when you're going to tell one thing to 7.8 billion people, we're going to tell them.
It's a good question. I would probably tell them that they're more powerful than they could ever imagine. And that power always comes from within. Just have faith in everything that you do. And with faith, all the things are possible.
Love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, bro.
No problem. Thank you very much.